Good evening. The message from the Prime Minister today was that to do nothing would risk the medical and moral disaster of an overwhelmed NHS. And that's why he's putting the whole country into a 4-week shutdown as of Thursday to slow the rise in coronavirus cases. It's a decision that affects huge swathes of the capital that are still recovering or haven't even begun to recover from the first lockdown. Both workers and businesses have been treading water over the past few months, and the decision to close doors again could badly hit an already fragile economy in the capital. In a moment, we'll be looking at the impact on our entertainment industry. But first, our political correspondent Simon Harris has been in Ealing, one of the capital's worst affected boroughs for cases of COVID.
Heartbreaking. I think it's just really, really heartbreaking. You know, we put our heart and soul into this.
Christmas is coming and Sandra's gift shop in Ealing was expecting a seasonal bonanza. Instead, she'll close the doors on Wednesday and miss out on one of her busiest months. To add insult to injury, she'll watch the big boys cash in.
Because non-essential items are available in big supermarkets still, it feels a little bit frustrating because I think we offer a really safe environment here. We hand sanitise, we wear face masks. We restrict the amount of people that come into the shop, and I think that it's possibly safer.
In another part of Ealing, Madhouse in Southall will also stop serving diners from Wednesday. It'll be takeaways only for the rest of the month. The restaurant is part of a multi-million-pound catering business. 2 new branches were due to open at the end of November, but those plans are now on hold. The firm's chairman, Sanjay, has seen his annual turnover drop from £10 million a year to under £2 million.
We're an island. We should have been able to keep ourselves quite safe. And, you know, I travelled in March, I travelled in April, and you were walking in and out of Heathrow as if nothing was wrong. And that's why it spread the way it spread.
In recent weeks, Ealing has emerged as London's COVID hotspot, with more than 200 new cases for every 100,000 people. Ealing's Labour Council believes part of the problem is the failure of the government's test and trace system. Too many people who test positive aren't getting follow-up calls, so no one knows who they've been in contact with.
Lots of people who've been in contact with a positive case person are going around and potentially spreading the virus.
In Parliament, the Prime Minister defended the new lockdown, saying the NHS was in danger of being overwhelmed.
I'm afraid the virus is doubling faster than we could conceivably add capacity. Even if we doubled capacity, the gain would be consumed in a single doubling of the virus.
But Labour thinks the Prime Minister should have acted weeks ago before the school half-term.
At every stage, the Prime Minister has been too slow, behind the curve. At every stage, he's overpromised and under-delivered. Rejecting the advice of his own scientists for 40 days was a catastrophic failure of leadership and of judgment.
And criticism wasn't confined to the opposition benches.
Mr Speaker, I will not be supporting the government's legislation on Wednesday because as we drift further into an authoritarian, coercive state, the only legal mechanism left open to me is to vote against that legislation.
In Ealing, the council is taking matters into its own hands. It's setting up its own contact tracing programme with librarians manning the phones and officials knocking on doors. Simon Harris, ITV News, Ealing.
Good evening. For almost 20 years, it's been nestled in between Tower Bridge and London Bridge. Its bowl-shaped, glass-covered exterior, very much a feature of London's riverside skyline. But as announced today, the Mayor is moving his City Hall headquarters. They're packing up and heading out of the landmark home on the edge of the city and relocating 7 miles up the road to the Docklands. According to the Mayor, it's all about saving money, £12 million a year, in fact. But not everyone's happy that London's political centre will no longer be in the heart of London, as our political correspondent Simon Harris reports.
It's goodbye City Hall and hello Crystal. The Mayor and London Assembly are moving home, swapping a glass building next to the Thames for a glass building in Docklands. The Mayor, Sadiq Khan, claims the move to Docklands will save more than £12 million a year at a time when money is tight. But Conservatives on the Assembly immediately branded it a half-baked plan based on dodgy numbers. The Crystal is a largely unused former exhibition and conference centre next to the often unused Thames cable car, although that's probably just a coincidence. As far as the Mayor is concerned, moving to the Crystal is a no-brainer.
The choice is to stay in City Hall, overlooking Tower Bridge, an iconic building, or and if we do that, making big cuts in the police, in the fire service, in transport, other frontline services, or moving to a building we own.
The current City Hall was purpose-built for the Mayor and Assembly, but it's rented from a property company.
Sadiq Khan could and should have looked in many different areas to make savings to avoid this move. He's chosen not to. Instead, he's chosen to make big cuts into police and fire budgets. What an extraordinary thing to be doing. The bureaucracy at City Hall is enormous. His PR budget has gone up massively. He really should be looking at these things rather than this.
I have much pleasure in declaring City Hall officially open.
City Hall was opened by the Queen in 2002. At its heart is a debating chamber and wraparound staircase with awkwardly spaced steps. The politicians and staff found some of its quirks tiresome, but the building became a celebrity.
City Hall, landmark for London.
It's where Lord Sugar wields the axe on his wannabe apprentices.
Good. We're in place.
And it's made a fleeting appearance in a Harry Potter movie. But what will happen to it now?
Well, the developer's got two choices. You try and make a refurbishment work, or you have to flatten it and start again. It's that debate. Do you go new or do you work with existing? I mean, that could be, it's so different it might appeal just to the right occupier.
But it might end up being flattened.
It could, yeah.
It's going to cost £14 million to refurbish the Crystal and make the move. When it opens next year, it will have a new name, City Hall. Simon Harris, ITV News, the Royal Docks.
Good evening. We've been here once before, but this time London is still recovering from the sudden knock to the system that was the first lockdown. Some businesses, venues and workers will close their doors tonight, not knowing if they'll even exist in 4 weeks' time when, at the moment, they're due to reopen. MPs voted earlier to approve the new regulations, which would come into force at midnight in the hope that this will be enough to slow the spread of the coronavirus this coming winter. Throughout the programme, our reporters will be live across the capital looking at what impact the shutdown will have on our city. But first, our political correspondent Simon Harris is looking at the Londoners trying to beat the clock as midnight approaches.
Zumba isn't for the faint-hearted. It's a high-energy dance class which burns up the calories. But from midnight, Zumba is illegal, another casualty of lockdown. In Greenwich today, they were making the most of a last opportunity to shake it all about.
This feels like something that is essential, just like going shopping.
Everyone thought it was getting back to normal, and now it just feels like it's been snatched away again.
I'm here every day. I'm going to miss it very much.
The class teacher is in no doubt about the benefits of Zumba.
It's good for the mental health, it's good for physical health and well-being, and it helps us to keep the viruses away from the body. Yes? Yeah. There we go, yeah.
The decision to close gyms and leisure centres might appear to contradict the government's declared aim of fighting the flab and keeping everyone healthy.
The government's own website couldn't be clearer. Being overweight or obese puts you at risk of dying from COVID. Yet from tomorrow, any fitness activity in a gym like this is banned.
Swimming pools too will close. Most gyms and fitness centres have embraced social distancing and COVID security since they were allowed to reopen. But it didn't give them immunity from the new lockdown.
We're annoyed, disappointed, shocked, but also understanding, I suppose, underneath it, that something has to happen to get the virus under control. We're just not sure that leisure centres should be the right target for this. Swimming pools, frankly, you go out cleaner than you came in. It's one big bowl of sanitizer.
The Prime Minister, who admits he was too fat when he caught COVID, restated the case for lockdown.
The number of COVID patients in some hospitals is already higher than at the peak of the first wave. As the Chief Medical Officer has said, if we did not act now, the chances of the NHS being in extraordinary trouble in December will be very, very high.
Across London, barbers and hairdressers reported a last-minute rush to beat the clock. This one in Greenwich was due to close at 5:30, but decided to stay open until 10.
It's not even a case of, a haircut is a necessity, but it makes people feel better about themselves, especially in lockdown. That little boost will help people get through it.
Across the street at the leisure centre, there was time for one last dance. The challenge now is to find new ways to stay fit and healthy in the days ahead as London gets darker and colder. Simon Harris, ITV News, Greenwich.
Simon's joined us in the studio. This is all happening because of those rising coronavirus infections. So where do we stand with those numbers at the moment?
Well, when we spoke to the Mayor last week, he said there was some evidence of the infection rate in London beginning to slow down. And if you look at the average number of cases across the whole of London, it's currently 148 for every 100,000 people. And that has been stable at that figure for the last 2 weeks. But there are some hotspots like Hammersmith and Fulham, where it's 211, Ealing 194, and Redbridge 188 for every 100,000. Around 1,000 Londoners are in hospital being treated for COVID-19 in London hospitals. That number has gone up slightly, and the number of those on ventilators is around about 150. That has also gone up very slightly.
Okay. Simon, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Duncan Golestani. Londoners woke up to a new lockdown this morning, but also the familiar traffic jams and queues for the bus. Despite instructions from the Prime Minister to stay at home, roads, tubes and buses were busy with commuters. From businesses, the frustration at being forced to close has been helped by the Chancellor's announcement the furlough scheme will continue until March, protecting jobs. Already encouraging signs on infection rates. They are down in 19 of the 32 boroughs. And in the last hour, the Prime Minister has said 4 weeks is enough to have a real impact. We'll have more reaction from businesses in a moment, but first our political correspondent Simon Harris on London in lockdown again.
LBC Travel, I'm Joanne. We're very busy this morning on the roads, considering it's the first day of lockdown. Busy as always, northbound to the Blackwall Tunnel and also on the A40 coming into town to Gypsy.
Rush hour, and London didn't look like a city in lockdown. Roads into the capital were busy with cars, vans and lorries on their way to work.
There were a lot more people on the streets than anticipated. It's not like the first lockdown at all.
From yesterday for today, not much difference for the traffic is quite busy.
It is a bit quieter, certainly in my office, but out and about there's a reasonable number of people around, so it's quiet, but not a lot quieter than it has been.
An army of masked commuters poured through the ticket barriers of Victoria, just as they did yesterday and the day before. In the early days of the first lockdown, there was a post-apocalyptic emptiness to central London. That was never going to be the case this time. For a start, schools and colleges are still open. The building industry also has lockdown immunity. Sites across London were in full swing.
The key thing is to follow the advice. The advice from the government is, if it's possible for you to work from home, work from home. If it's not, go to your place of work. If you are going to your place of work, please avoid the rush hour.
Shops selling essentials are allowed to open. Eating out is still on the menu, so long as it's a takeaway.
Compared with, let's say, 2 days ago, we're definitely feeling the difference in terms of people coming in, business. Not as many people coming to work as before.
At Grays in Essex, Anna was putting her barber's shop into hibernation. She thinks this latest lockdown is wrong.
I do understand that people need to be looked after and cared for, and we're going to be kind to each other about this, but we need to be able to earn a living and get back to some kind of normality, because this is not normal, and I don't want this to become my new normal.
Not far away, Alina and Dacian are trying to put on a brave face. They've only owned their restaurant since January.
We hoping that we'll manage to survive.
At least now we have the experience of a previous lockdown, which is as opposed to what was there before.
It's not convenient. However, as I said, if we can help in reducing the number of cases, so be it.
In Downing Street, the Prime Minister said the lockdown was not open-ended.
4 weeks is enough for these measures to make a real impact. So these rules will expire, and on the 2nd of December, we plan to move back to a tiered approach. There is light at the end of the tunnel.
There is one part of central London where the landscape has barely changed since the first lockdown. The financial square mile is still a pale shadow of its former self. Simon Harris, ITV News, The City.